Okay, this is part 8 on my video series on Mount Meru and Mercator's map. In this video I'm going to talk about the working principles behind Mount Meru and anti-gravity. Now, if you've been following my video series, you'll know that I've put forward the conclusion that this magnetic mountain here is Mount Meru. And we've got a whirlpool going around here, and that this is placed at the North Pole. Okay. Now, when I started doing this research, I wasn't expecting it to lead me in this direction, but it has, and I want to show you some of the connections that I've made. Okay, so let's have another look at this image that I've shown before. Mount Meru here, castle here, and we've got these rings. This is I wasn't sure what this was depicting when I first looked at this, but this is obviously mountain ranges in rings, right? Okay, so we've got the main mountain of interest, Mount Meru here. It's enlarged to show that that's the focus, but then you've got all these mountain ranges in rings, right? And if you compare it to the Mercator map, there's a whirlpool here as well. Okay. Now, a few months back I started to make a connection between the working principles behind what's going on here and someone else's work that I had been researching many years back and had abandoned. Now, for those of my subscribers who are not familiar with this research, it's called Coral Castle. Okay. Now, it's in the United States of Florida, and apparently the theory is that he'd rediscovered the secrets of the ancient Egyptians, and he built this coral castle made of, and this image here, it's a 30-ton stone made out of coral. Okay. Now, it is believed that he used this device to levitate the coral. Okay. Now, many people have looked at this and basically got absolutely nowhere with it. Now, I was starting to theorize that I could see some similarities between this device and Mount Meru. Okay. Wouldn't it make perfect sense that he's got salt water in here? It's like he's shaped it in the shape of a bucket. This middle piece here, you think this represents Mount Meru. So there's a magnetic north going that way. And what's not evidently clear in this photo here is there's 24 V-shaped magnets. Okay. And I'll see if I can find a better shot that will explain how this is configured. Okay, so here's a better shot that someone had posted on the internet that shows you the connections underneath the cement. Okay, so we've got, I'm not sure how many magnets he's got here, but in the actual device he's got 24 of them. Okay, so all these neutral centers here where the bolts are, you got the neutral center going around in a circular pattern. Okay, they're all linked. Okay, so what this does, according to the man who built the device, is that he put out a book called Magnetic Current, right? And what this does is it forces the magnetic current to go around in a circle, whether it's that way or that way, I don't really know. But it's creating a magnetic vortex, okay, this way. Now, the chap who built the device, what he was trying to explain to us in his book was that when you have an electromagnet like this and put a bar on top of it, the magnets just go loop around indefinitely. Okay, whether it's that way or that way, I don't really know. Okay, so there's no perceptible magnetic field. It's all going around in a vortex. So he's doing conceptually the same thing with this, but with his other device. So he's doing, so going back to the original device, you can see he's got this ring going around here. So this is, well, in my mind, this is ensuring that all these neutral centers of all the magnets are forcing the magnets to go around in a vortex. So we've got a magnetic field that going this way, but it's not a perceptible magnetic field. It's what I refer to as the neutral center. In this case, it's creating a neutral vortex. And presumably, now I'm not exactly sure how he's doing it, but if this is modelled off Mount Meru, then there's another magnetic field in the centerpiece here. Now, I was initially, when I was looking at this, I was thinking that he was putting the electromagnet in the centerpiece here, but you could also do it with a ring magnet. Now, what he was doing, we don't know, and I think that's why no one's been able to duplicate this technology. So it's, now I want to show you something else. It is thought that this device is modelled off the Egyptian Dajjed. So I want to show you that. Now, before I do, notice the drain hole just here. Okay. Now this, in my mind, represents Mount Meru. Okay, so whether he was placing an electromagnet of sorts into these holes or something, it's not known. I suppose potentially it could be putting it down here on the side. I guess potentially it could be putting a ring magnet around on top of this component here to create a north facing field. And here we have the underside view. So notice we've got like a ground connection here. Okay, so presumably the water is draining out down here, going to ground. And here's the very bottom view. Okay, so you got this shaft going down to ground, so presumably the water was dripping down here. Now, I couldn't help but notice this is in his coral castle as well. Do you think this represents the North Pole Star? You got the water there. No sign of a vortex though, but let's compare that to an Egyptian Dajjed. Okay. Notice how you've got this shaft, presumably going to ground. Now, something I want to explain this part of the device here. Now, I've been studying this device for a long time, and it's become apparent to me that there's hieroglyphs built into this device, and it's not entirely obvious. So these vertical lines here, these are a hieroglyph. Okay, I had to look them up. I had a theory that there was water in this part of the device, And sure enough, these hieroglyphs mean a pool of water. And here again you have the Dajed with a platform levitating. You got Horus symbolizing resurrection with the snake. That's the snake represents resurrection, reincarnation, and he's floating on a pedestal. You'll note here that this top section here, you think that's representing Mount Meru? Okay, so the description of the Dajed is symbolically linked with the backbone of Osiris. Okay, so here you got a depiction of a person standing up with their backbone in alignment with the central shaft of the device. Okay, yeah, here you can see an overlay of a backbone on top of the Dajed. Right, now when I was looking at this, I was starting to theorise that what they're referring to is this. If this is to do with resurrection and reincarnation, then this symbolises Mount Meru. Mount Meru is entirely to do with resurrection and reincarnation. This is what it's all about. Okay, so this device, everyone tells us that they don't know what this device represents. Well, this device represents Mount Meru. Okay. It represents the magnetic mountain at the North Pole. Now, in my research, I did come across a story that mentioned that the castle on top of the mountain was levitating. Now, I haven't found any evidence to support that story, and I've previously haven't spoke about it. But it does lead me in the direction of this research. So anyway, one of my subscribers pointed me in the right direction in making all the connections about this device. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so one of my subscribers pointed me to this YouTube video, Anti-Gravity by Stan Deo. Okay, so I want to present a portion of this video because it's critical to understanding what I'm talking about.
If you ever recall, in the late 50s, early 60s, it wasn't Dino Crass put on, there was a science fiction writer, not a science fiction writer, a UFO investigator back then, mentioning the guy that knew the secret, the military guy named Lorenzo that knew the secret about the flying saucers. Do you remember that? Probably not. Well, anyway, it was a rumor in the UFO community back then that there was some guy that had the secret to anti-gravity that knew it, and he was in control of all this for the military. His name was Lorenzo. Probably a captain or something, they weren't sure. It wasn't a Mr. Lorenzo. It was what is called a Lorentz, O-R-E-N-T-Z-O. What you just saw up here makes what is called a Lorentz O. The secret to the anti-gravity problem or situation is the Lorentz O. Named after a mathematician, Lorentz. It tells what happens when you have electricity going this way in a conductor, and at the same time you have electricity going around it to make like this in a different direction. In between them, a force appears, whether in air, water, whatever. It's called the Lorentz force, and it tries to get these two conductors to line up. And if you don't let them, then the stress has to be transferred to the medium you're in, anti-gravity. Now this device here, I built to show people. We're going to see that little thing over here on the left animate, and I'm going to show you a long quartz tube. and inside it will be a copper pipe, a thin pipe of copper, lining the inside of this tube. And then I'm going to put a nail and a cork right down the middle of it, and I'm going to take electricity from a electric arc welder, 1200 watts at about 60 volts. And I'm going to shove that down through that nail, through some salt water, which is just tap water with a bit of salt, a couple tablespoons of salt, and some hydrochloric acid to make it conductive. And it's going to go through that water into this copper sheath, which is then connected to the other end of the copper tube back to the electric arc welder. You'll see all this. I'm telling you beforehand so that you can just contemplate what you're seeing. What you're going to see at the end of all this is that scene right there, where I have a copper tube with all this, and the glass tube with all this water in it, sitting right down inside of two speaker magnets. You know, the back of your speakers, those round donut magnets, they have a north-south field running like this, which is the same as one of those washer coils that I was showing you before. And when I do that, and I just do nothing but hit the power switch, and electricity starts to flow down from that nail you see at the top down to the copper, you're going to see spin. And that's the beginning of the vortex tornado, the Lorentz O. And you can use that to make plasma craft and anti-gravity craft. You can also use it in water at lower temperatures to make very fast boats. That's when I was a little bit younger. Well, maybe a lot. There's your, well, that might be brass. I can't tell from the colors. Brass or copper, just a conductor. Quartz tube, because this gets very hot very quickly. Glove, obviously, to keep from burning myself again. There's your ring magnets. There's the jar of water from the tap. Still water is better than you put a couple of tablespoons of salt and about, half an ounce of hydrochloric or something in it. That's the company that made the electric arc welder. That's a 100 amp diode down there, which turns the alternating current into one direction, direct current. And there's the magic nail that goes down through the cork. I forget what we made that out of, but it was something that didn't melt easy. And here you go. No moving parts except the bubbles that form from the heat, showing where the ions are traveling, following the vortex field set up. And this occurs down the center of any of those craft. The next time you're sitting next to somebody blowing smoke rings.
Okay, so what Stan's being shown us in that video is very, very similar to what we have at Coral Castle, built by a gentleman called Lead Scalen. And it's also very, very similar to what's the working principles behind Mount Meru with the whirlpool. So, although not totally identical, they all are very, very similar, and it would appear that there is more than one reason why the information pertaining to about Mount Meru, Atlantis, Avalon, Shambhala, and from Norse mythology, Yggdrasil have all been suppressed. Okay? Not only do we have the Fountain of Youth in this location, it would appear that we also have anti-gravity technology, which would explain a lot about our ancient past, about how the pyramids were built, about how Coral Castle was built, and presumably all the man-made UFOs in the United States.